Hello and welcome to the Fit to Transform podcast, where you learn how to train and diet effectively and, most importantly, how to maintain those results for life, once and for all. I'm Nikias Tomasiello, a transgender training and nutrition coach working online with anyone who's ready for a true lifestyle transformation, anywhere they may be in the world. As a friendly reminder, any and all information provided is for educational purposes only. You should consult with your doctor before implementing any changes to your diet and exercise program. With that disclaimer out of the way, thank you for being here. Now grab yourself a cup of tea or pre-workouts and enjoy. Yo, dear listeners, welcome back to the Top Surgery 101 mini-series. In this second and final segment, I'm going to talk you through my nutritional approach from January 2024 until now to get into the shape that I want it to be before the procedure. And I'm going to use my experience as a practical application of the nutritional principles that you want to use to prepare not only for a procedure like this, but for any major event that may be important to you, be it a holiday or another valuable moment in your life. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, moving on to the nutrition part of this episode, using myself and my top surgery plan as an example, I'm going to break down the scientific principles and practical factors to consider when you're creating a nutrition strategy to get into the shape that you wish to achieve, not only for top surgery, but more in general for a special event, be it a wedding, a meaningful holiday, or another magical procedure. Now, if you know me, dear listeners, you'll know that I think that planning is the name of the game when it comes to nutrition. And I personally started planning the final stages of my top surgery nutrition prep in January 2024, because that's when I had the first of 2 top surgery consultations. And it's at this initial meeting that they gave me an estimated surgery date. And at the time, they said it would take place around the end of 2024, at the very latest, the beginning of 2025. Ideally, you'd start planning as soon as possible, but without a date, there was little I could do. So I waited until I had this ballpark figure, and that's when I began charting my top surgery nutrition plan. Now, if you wanted to start working with me towards top surgery, I would recommend doing so as soon as possible. So signing up for coaching as soon as possible, or at the very least, to start planning as soon as you are able to. So my goal for the period of time between January and the prospected date was to build as much muscle as possible, which in theory would require at least maintenance, and if I wanted really the fastest rate possible, then a moderate caloric surplus. In addition to that, before surgery, so in time for the procedure, I wanted to be on the lower end of what I call my comfortable body weight range. Within this range, which is specific to me and which I've identified through trial and error over years of putting on muscle in a surplus and then losing body fat in a deficit, I carry healthy levels of body fat. I perform well in life and in the gym. I sleep well, and I don't have any symptoms associated with either being too lean or with carrying too much excess fat. That's what I call my comfortable body weight range. I essentially thrive within this range. I feel healthy and I perform well. So for surgery, I wanted to be lean. That's why I mentioned the lower end of this range, and that's purely due to personal preference. But I certainly didn't want to be as lean as I was for my 2022 photo shoot prep, which is not a healthy physique for me to maintain in the long term. It's really cool for a photo shoot, and I am really proud that I achieved it because it was no mean feat, but it's not my everyday lifestyle physique. Now, if you carry excess body fat, so you are overweight or you have obesity, losing at least some of this excess body fat will likely help you lower the risks posed by the procedure, as well as the risks posed by excess body fat. And it can also help you undergo an easier recovery, because there are proven negative effects that carrying excess body fat can have on our health. However, I do not recommend crash dieting in an attempt to lose as much fat as possible, which is unfortunately something that I see is very common in the gender diverse community. And often this is because there is a certain BMI target that the surgeon will give you. And sometimes people receive these targets and not enough time to get there at a moderate and sustainable pace. And while I completely understand and fully empathize with how desperate you may feel about getting surgery, believe me, I get it. I've been waiting since 2018, and before I even knew that the procedure existed, I've basically been waiting since I hit puberty. But if at all possible for you, consider delaying the procedure in order to give yourself more time to achieve fat loss safely. Because if you crash diet, for one, it's going to have a harmful impact to your mental health, if not your physical health as well, which is never ideal, and it's certainly not ideal before a major surgery that has the potential to cause post-operative depression. Talk about a double whammy, right? Second of all, if you're looking to lose fat for top surgery or another special occasion, you probably want to lose it to benefit the rest of your life as well, too. And that's why you need to make a sustainable lifestyle change. And crash diets are not a lifestyle change. So in my view, it's more realistic and beneficial to lose any excess fat that you're capable of losing, depending on your experience with fat loss, your current mental and physical health status, and your personal timeline before surgery. And this might mean that you don't end up losing all of the fat you would like. And that's why I would recommend, if you do have a BMI target whereby you must lose that fat or you won't be able to access the surgery, that you give yourself more time if possible. On the other hand, if you don't carry excess body fat, which is my case, surgeons, in my experience, generally recommend to be a shape and a size that you're comfortable living in after surgery, or at least while you're not able to train and manipulate your body composition with nutrition and training. This is how my surgeon put it: a shape and a size that you're comfortable living in after surgery. And I think that's an excellent way of phrasing it, which is why I wanted to quote it. So again, for me, being leaner, but still within my comfortable range, is personal preference. You may not want to get as lean as me, or you may want to get even leaner. In my view, what's important is that you're still within your own comfortable range, since carrying too little body fat, similarly to having excess amounts of it, can affect your ability to recover from surgery in a negative way. Now, here's what actually happened to my nutrition plan. My top surgery got scheduled on August 27th, so my timeline got unexpectedly, albeit very happily, shortened. So that's how my plan turned out. Between February and March 2024, I did a 6-week mini cut, and in the middle of that, I took a single week as a deload from training. And since I wasn't training and giving my body the stimulus to grow or maintain muscle, I also returned to maintenance calories for that single week. And when I started the mini cut, I was at the top of my comfortable range, and I lost 5 pounds by the end of the mini cut. Then between March and July 2024, I underwent a 15-week gaining phase in a small surplus where I gained a total of 4 pounds. And so that's about a pound per month, since 16 weeks is almost, 15 weeks is almost 4 months. Now, in July, that's when, no, actually, it wasn't in July. In June, in mid-June, I was told that I would have my second and final consultation in mid-July, which I wasn't expecting. I expected it to be around September or October. That's the original date they gave me, prospective date. So when they phoned me up to tell me, hey, can you come in on July 18th? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I also realized that my top surgery was going to be a lot sooner than expected, because at the first consultation they told me that on the day of the second consultation they would schedule top surgery, and it would have to be between 2 weeks after the second consult and 3 months. So if I was going to have the second consult in mid-July, that meant that my top surgery could be anywhere between the start of August and the start of October at the latest. So that's when I decided that since I was close to the top of my comfortable range again, but not, I was about a pound leaner than I'd been in February, then I wasn't going to do a long mini cut or a longer mini cut of 6 weeks like I did in February to March. But I would do a 5-week mini cut where I would take an even more aggressive approach to fat loss. And as a result, I lost 5 pounds, so a pound per week. And when I say even more aggressive, that is because the whole purpose of doing a mini cut is to lose fat faster than when you're doing a longer fat loss phase or a longer cut, which means you have to undergo a more aggressive deficit than usual. Now, in my case, the most aggressive deficit that would prevent muscle loss, based on the research I'm aware of, is likely around a pound per week at the most, or 1% of my body weight, because I can lose that by achieving a 500 calorie deficit below maintenance. And in a specific study that I read, and that I also read a couple of research reviews about, one of which was in Mass, which I strongly recommend. This was written by Dr. Eric Trexler, whom I've had on the podcast several times now. Anyway, according to this meta-analysis and meta-regression, it seems like you can actually continue making gains, albeit slow ones, in a deficit up to when you're around 500 calories below maintenance, at which point, according to this specific analysis, meta-analysis, it seems like gains were blunted, and potentially, if you were in an even greater deficit, then you might start losing some lean mass, which includes muscle mass, or fat-free mass rather, which includes muscle mass, but also water, organ and bone mass, so it's not all just muscle. Anyway, this is a single meta-analysis. It's informative, but also Dr. Eric Trexler pointed out that this 500 calorie below maintenance isn't a strict cut-off. Anyway, I don't want to go too far into that because it's his article, not mine. This is only my understanding of it. And since I'm going to have it on the podcast soon, or well, I will have had him on the podcast and possibly even posted the episode. No, it will be the next episode, I think, that I will release. Anyway, you will hear, or you will have already heard, what he has to say on this particular topic. Anyway, the fastest rate that I felt was safe for me to achieve, given that I was already pretty lean. I didn't really have a ton of body fat to lose, which would have protected me from muscle loss. Then it would have that rate was 1% of my body weight, or around a pound per week. In terms of physique development results, I have to say that I was really stoked by the end of this period from the beginning of 2024 to now in August. I am so excited about the results that I've been able to achieve. I posted them all over social media, so you can just go to my Instagram account and you'll definitely see some progress pictures of mine. And I'll tell you why. First of all, for someone who's been bodybuilding consistently for 6 years, 15 weeks isn't a long time to put on muscle, even if I'm in a surplus. So when I saw that my pecs, my back, my delts, my arms, even my quads looked a little thicker and wider when I gained those extra 4 pounds in a surplus, whereas my waist was still about the same size, those were excellent signs that I gained muscle with a minimal increase in fat during the surplus, which I was absolutely over the moon about. But because I've been training for so long, for me, the most exciting comparisons are always between similar body weights, because when the body weight is different, you're carrying different amounts of body fat, and that makes it a little bit trickier to assess if you've made any real improvements in muscle mass, because it's your body fat that sits on top of your muscle mass. So if you carry a little bit more, yes, you're going to look bigger, but is that more muscle? It's hard to tell unless you lose fat. So the change that I am most enthusiastic about is the change that I could see in my pictures between now in August and December 2023, which was the last time that I was the same weight that I am now that I've just wrapped up my mini cut. I shared these pictures on social media first, before the pictures of from the beginning to the end of the mini cut, before any other picture, because I was so immensely proud of the difference, in the sense that I have much more evident muscle definition all over my body, despite being the exact same body weight. And you can only achieve this extra definition without losing weight if you have bigger muscles and you carry less body fat. Which means that over the last 8 months, I've been able to lose body fat and replace it with a similar, if not the exact same weight, in muscle mass. And that's why the number on the scale is the same, but the look is so different. And that's why, as a side note, the scale can provide useful data, but there is no point letting it rule your life, because ultimately, you don't care to be a certain number on the scale. You care to look a certain way. And the reason why I wanted to share all this, even if you can't see the pictures on a podcast, which makes it a little bit awkward, but it was still important for me to talk about this, is that I think it can be helpful, first of all, to reflect about how little change occurs every 3 to 4 months, especially when you're more advanced like me, and how the impact after 6 to 12 months is far more obvious, which is why personally I don't really compare progress pictures all that often. I'll do a comparison every 6 to 12 months, and then if I'm doing something a little bit more aggressive like a mini cut, I might compare pictures a little bit more often, like between the beginning and the end, just because the changes can be more obvious and they are faster when you're losing fat. But if I'm trying to compare muscle growth changes, yeah, 6 weeks aren't gonna cut it. And second of all, I also believe it's valuable to understand how slow progress can get when you've been consistent with nutrition and training for longer than a couple of years, which is my case, so that you don't set yourself unrealistic expectations to forever achieve the same rate of progress as when you were a beginner. Because sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but that is not going to happen. Beginners are going to gain muscle at the fastest rate that they ever will. As soon as you're no longer a beginner, well, not as soon, it's more like it happens gradually. The more advanced you become, the slower muscle growth gets, to a point where it becomes undetectable, and that's when you start having to make further changes to try and trigger a little bit of a faster rate of growth. So in conclusion, I am over the moon and proud of myself, not only for the body composition change I've achieved, but also for the fact that I accomplished this change while nurturing my physical and mental health leading up to surgery. I feel like I'm in an excellent position now. I've been at maintenance for a week. I'm gonna have another week at maintenance calories, and it was important to me to have two to be recovered from the diet fatigue that was both mental and physical that I've accrued during a mini cut because I want to be in the best possible position mentally and physically to undergo the procedure. Even so, if I'd had a longer timeline between the first consultation to top surgery, my preference would have been to program longer phases in both a surplus and a deficit. And as a rule of thumb, I find that taking more time and a more moderate approach to both is what works best for the majority of people. Now, in my case, having coached others for 5 years plus and having pursued bodybuilding for over 6 years at this point, I have gained the mindset, the experience, and the skills to be able to run successful, shorter, and more aggressive phases too, if needs must. But I still believe that it would likely be less stressful at the very least if I'd had more time. It would have been less stressful at the very least if I'd had more time. On average, my most successful top surgery prep clients sign up for coaching about 6 to 12 months before surgery, because that gives us the time to help them accomplish at least part of the lifestyle change that's required to get the best results they're capable of. If they're more advanced, they can sign up a little bit sooner than that or on the lower end of the 6 to 12 months spectrum. And if they're beginners, though, they really need as much time as they possibly can get. But sometimes this simply isn't possible, and often it's for reasons that's outside of your control. And I've had several clients who signed up in the last 2 to 3 months before surgery, even. One of them being Sam, who was very happy with the results, and they shared their experience on a podcast episode, and that was actually episode 55. But they were in a very special position, so to speak, and we talked about that at length in episode 55, and I'll put the link in the show notes, whereby they were a great candidate for body recomposition, whereby it was possible for them, and that's what happened, to gain muscle and lose fat at the exact same time while being in a calorie deficit. So that's why, even though we were so close to surgery, we were 12 weeks out really, and then by the time we started 10 weeks out, they still got results that they were very, very happy with. Now, if you are signing up for coaching with me or with another coach very close to surgery, you can only aim for what's optimal within your time constraints, but I still believe that those results would be better than what you would accomplish if you'd been on your own. So if you can, I would strongly recommend hiring a coach to help you with your top surgery fitness prep, even if you don't have a lot of time before the procedure. In summary, if you want to have a successful nutrition prep for a special event, be it surgery or something different, these are my top tips in a nutshell. Give yourself as much time as possible. Prioritize a moderate approach whenever possible, one that helps you make a lifestyle change over crash dieting. There is a place for more aggressive approaches, but I believe that they require more experience and greater skills than beginners have on average. So I would reserve them for more advanced people who really know their shit about nutrition. Then my next top tip is that getting some way towards your goal is better than stagnating or going backwards. So don't get discouraged if you don't have as much time as you think would be ideal, and still work towards getting as healthy as you can for the procedure and getting as close as you can to the shape that you would want to achieve. And finally, set yourself realistic expectations about the results that you can achieve and the timeline required. Or, if you have one, ask your coach to help you set those expectations so that you know what can be considered realistic in your specific case. Because if you're not a fitness professional, then you simply may not know. To wrap up the podcast, what I want to do is cover what I'm currently planning to bring to the hospital with me as a certified nutritionist. So, I live in Liverpool, and my surgery is going to take place in Manchester, which is about an hour and a half away by train. This means that I'm going to stay at an Airbnb for a couple of days before I head back home the day after the op. So, I'm planning on going to Manchester the night before the surgery so that I wake up in Manchester the next day, make my way to the hospital in the morning, and then I'm going to stay overnight in Manchester. And assuming everything went well, my surgeon has already said that I can easily go back home the next day. In addition to that, I need to travel light because it's only going to be my partner and me, and I won't be able to carry very much at all, if anything, straight after surgery. I've also already asked and had it confirmed that the medical team are happy for me to bring my own food on the day of surgery. Because I'm not a big fan of hospital food, I don't think it's particularly nutritious in most cases, which is a bit ironic if you think about it. And I know that it's typically pretty low in protein, which is very important because protein is a building block of pretty much every tissue in your body. And it's especially important to rebuild those tissues after you've been cut open, right? So, as you can tell, I've already planned ahead. The Airbnb is already booked. I've already spoken to the medical team about what I can do regarding food. I know what time I need to be at the hospital by, and likely what time I'll be discharged, which seems to be likely to be on the same day. They're not planning for me to stay there overnight, or at least when their surgeries go well, they don't keep patients in overnight. Patients in my specific case, because they do sometimes have inpatient people staying overnight, but they told me that due to my health status, it's fine for me not to be there overnight. I'm being very careful to specify that that's what they told me because every patient is different, of course, and you always have to rely on what your specific surgeon tells you. So here's what I'm going to do for top surgery. I'm going to get to the Airbnb after dinner, so I'm going to have my final meal the day before surgery at home. The next day, I need to be fasted until after surgery, and I'll probably be extremely fatigued and not really want to stomach very much. So, what I'm planning to bring is, if I manage to carry everything, protein powder and ready meals. And I ordered these ready meals weeks ago from a company called Relo, which stands for reload apparently. That's why I know how to pronounce it. And I like these ready meals in particular because they are vacuum sealed. So they keep for up to a year in a cupboard, which means I don't need to worry about having a fridge or a freezer. They're also calorie friendly and they're super high in protein. They have on average 300 calories and 44 grams of protein each, which means that even if I can't stomach very much after surgery, I'm thinking I can have at least one, if not two, of these ready meals. And they are pouches, so they're also very, very light, as opposed to being a whole sealed container like a fresher ready meal would be. And then I chose the Airbnb specifically so it would be close to a really big supermarket where either I or my partner can easily go on foot so that I can do a food shop, ideally the day before surgery, if not after surgery, to top up on some things. And I'm planning on getting fruit and vegetables, and I'm planning on getting something for breakfast as well. And if I manage to bring the protein powder with me, that will be part of my breakfast. If I didn't manage, I will definitely go for something easy to prepare that's just literally open and eat it, like Greek yogurt, for example, because I need to take into account that I'll have very limited mobility, especially in the initial days after surgery, and I will have neither the energy nor the ability, most likely, to prepare complicated meals. And I'm also already thinking about my nutrition after top surgery when I'm back home. And at the very least, I am planning for the day I get back home, where before I leave my flat the Monday before the surgery, I want to make sure I have frozen fruit and vegetables and ready meals in the fridge and freezer, or at least ready ingredients, like as I said, simple things like Greek yogurt and canned beans that don't require very much prep at all, because the last thing I'm going to be in the mood for and have the capacity for physically is going to be a massive food shop the day after surgery. And that's what I recommend to all my clients who go on holiday, for example, to make sure they have a full day's worth of eating stored in the freezer or the fridge, depending on how long they're going away for, so that when they come back, they're not struggling with whatever they got in the cupboard, or they're not relying on takeaways, whereby they're not really making goal-aligned nutritional decisions. They're just making the best decision they can in order to eat something because they haven't prepared well enough. And whenever my clients actually listen, the results are so much better than when they don't plan ahead. Finally, for at least the first couple of weeks after surgery, I am considering potentially using a meal prep delivery company so that they can sort out one or two of my meals per day. But since I don't like cooking, I also already have a pretty substantial list of super easy meals that I'm confident I can make post-surgery, because I've been making them frequently now, and I know that they're very, very low difficulty. They don't require much preparation. They don't require me using my arms too much or anything like that. So I may not end up relying on this service, but at the same time, as much as I like to plan beforehand, I also need to accept that I can't plan for everything. So I have planned the stay at the Airbnb. I have a general idea of what to do for straight after surgery while I'm still in Manchester. And I also have an idea of what I want to plan for the first day I'm back home in Liverpool, but I am not making any specific plans for the days after that, because it's simply impossible and it's going to drive me insane. And then likely something will be entirely different, and so it was all a moot point anyway and a waste of my time. And with that, that's a wrap for today's podcast. Now, I'm hoping to maintain the usual podcast schedule, and I already know you're gonna get at least one more episode with, as I said, Dr. Eric Trexler coming up next week. But I'm also going to go on medical leave for 11 days from the day of surgery. And in this final week these last 9 days really, before medical leave, I'm going to prioritize my clients to make sure that they are sorted out for the time that I'll need to take off of work. And my content will be a secondary priority. So if I'm not able to record another podcast, I might have to put the show on a short hiatus until I'm back. Because once I'm on medical leave, my first and foremost priority will be to get back on my feet so that I can bring to you valuable content, not half-assed content because I haven't recovered. And similarly, so that I can show up as best as I can with my clients and not, again, at 50% energy because I haven't given myself the time to recover. And just like I said for nutrition, I can't really make too detailed of a plan right now about how I'll feel or what I'll be able to do in terms of podcast recordings before I go on leave. So I'm going to leave it here, and I'm going to end this by thanking you, as ever, for listening to me every single week. I'm really looking forward to talking to you on the other side of my new post-op life. Until then, dear listeners. Lastly, if you want to support the podcast and help me reach more people, please leave a 5-star rating or review on any podcast platform that you're using. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll speak to you soon.